What's going on, Guardians? It's Tizzle here, and in this video, I'll be showcasing my favorite build to run Glaives with. But before we get into it, I just want to shout myself out and my amazing community. I know I'm a little late, but in the spirit of Thanksgiving, I thought it would be nice to just say how thankful I am for all your support. Seriously, from the bottom of my heart, it means so much to me how much you guys support me. I've recently gotten messages from people showing me that they're in the top 0.1% of watching my YouTube content, and I think that's awesome. I work my ass off to bring you guys helpful and informative videos, and it means so much to me that you guys support and watch the content. Also, the support on my recent streams has been outstanding. I only just started streaming consistently in late November, and you guys showed up like crazy to watch me on YouTube. And shout out to those of you who watched on Twitch. I reached affiliate status thanks to you guys, and that is super cool. So again, thank you so much. I've honestly enjoyed streaming far more than I thought I would. It's a chill time and it's fun to hang with you guys and shoot the shit or answer questions about Destiny. If you want to come by sometime, be sure to follow me on Twitch and it should notify you whenever I go live. My channel is It's Tizzle 7. I don't have a stream schedule yet or anything as I'm pretty new to it and I'm also swamped with making videos, but I will go live as often as I can and I hope to do a lot more streaming in the new year. But yeah, I just think it's awesome that so many of you joined in to watch me, a PvE player, play a ton of Iron Banner of all things. So anyways, I just wanted to share my appreciation for all of you right off the jump. Your support is greatly appreciated. So with that out of the way, let's take a look at this amazingly fun exotic, the Triton Vice Arms on Hunter. They have the exotic perk Halberdier's Reach, which states, increases glaive reload speed and melee damage when surrounded. Glaive melee final blows detonate in an explosion. So let's look at the Destiny data compendium for a bit more info. First, you have the part with the ammo overflowing. This will reload one shot into the mag up to 100% capacity, so if a glaive holds 6 shots, this can make it hold 12. Next, we have the perks that proc when you are surrounded by 3 or more enemies. This gives you plus 50 reload speed, which is always nice, but ideally you won't have to reload very much if you're getting melee kills. And getting those melee kills will be made far easier thanks to the 100% increased melee damage. So now your glaives hit for double the melee damage as long as you're surrounded. And finally, we have the glaive projectile kill causing an explosion. This helps with one of the glaive's weakest traits, being that it's a single target damage weapon. So if there are a group of adds and you get a projectile kill, then it will cause an explosion and deal damage to nearby combatants. This is really good with things like chill clip on rake angle or destabilizing rounds. So now that we know what the exotic does, let's take a look at the build. Now, I want to be clear, this was a triple glaive build that I ran for a solo GM Nightfall, and I also took it through the Lightblade GM with a team. That being said, you can tweak a lot of this build to just focus on glaive damage while still using actual weapons. So for the dodge, I went with Acrobat's dodge as that helped me get Radiant without having access to my melees, because when you use 3 glaives, you can't use a charged melee. But if you don't want to do this, then you could run something like Withering Blade and Facet of Dawn to get Radiant. But again, I want to show the true Glaive God build, so I had Acrobat's dodge. And then I just had Combination Blow on because the melee didn't really matter. For the super, it's pretty activity dependent, but I really like Tether or Silence and Squall, both are great. The grenade is really important though. I highly recommend Duskfield grenades. This is because it will slow and freeze enemies, which provides us with a lot of benefits. The first benefit is that frozen targets actually take 120% more damage from basic melee attacks. I believe this used to work on charged melees as well, but naturally that became extremely busted with damage stacking, so Bungie removed the charged melee part. But luckily for us, glaive melees are basically coded as an uncharged melee. This means that glaive melee kills don't work with hands-on or heavy-handed, but they do work with this freeze interaction, and they even count towards progress for heavy ammo finder. As you can see in this clip, on Carl we hit for 14,186 damage, and then if we times that by 2.2 we get 31,209. So 120% more melee damage when we hit him while frozen. Plus this also procs shatter damage, which is even more damage and also important for later. So the other nice thing about Duskfield grenades is that by applying slow and freeze, it makes it really easy to proc our first aspect, Stylish Executioner. This states that defeating a target affected by any elemental debuff grants invisibility and true sight. And there is a secondary portion as well where after performing a Stylish Execution, your next melee attack while invisible weakens targets. This is a crucial component to the build as our glaive melees will be able to cause weaken, which will obviously enhance our damage by 15%. So we can throw a Duskfield into a group of adds, melee kill one of them, and then our next melee hit will apply weaken. I use this to my advantage to debuff many champions or bosses and it works very well. Not to mention, going invis can also really help with survivability. So this is a must run aspect. The next aspect is your choice. You could do Ascension to jolt everything to also proc Stylish Execution or more, or just go with Winter's Shroud to apply slow to enemies when you dodge near them, or you could use Threaded Spectre to make a decoy. I really like Threaded Spectre for survivability in case I need to get away from a threatening enemy, but you do you. In lower end content, the decoy probably isn't needed, but in high end content, it can be really valuable to set up a melee kill to get your loop going, or as a get out of jail free card to stay alive. So next we have the fragments. First is Facet of Purpose. This gives you a buff that is tied to your super whenever you pick up an orb. So if you run Tether, you will get Void Overshield, which really helps with survivability, and if you run Silence and Squall, you will get Frost Armor, which isn't as good, but it still provides some DR. You can also run a different super for something like Restoration or Woven Mail, which could also be decent. The choice is yours. Next, I ran Facet of Awakening, mostly for the plus 10 to Rezill, but it states rapidly defeating targets with light or dark damage, or Super Final Blows generates an elemental pickup of the matching damage type. I'm pretty sure this only works from the Glaive projectile kills and not the melees, so it's pretty niche as you are mostly getting Glaive melee kills with this build. So if you didn't want this, you could run Facet of Hope instead to lower your class ability cooldown when you have an elemental buff applied to you. Facet of Defiance creates a slowing or volatile explosion when you perform a finisher, assuming you're running a stasis or void super like I suggested. This is nice to have, as you are often finishing champs with this build because you're up close. And speaking of being up close, Facet of Protection is a must with this build. It gives you 15% damage resistance when you're surrounded by 3 or more enemies, which happens extremely often thanks to the aggressive nature of this build. And the last one is the most important fragment of all, Facet of Blessing. Melee final blows start health regeneration. This is absolutely crucial as it allows us to stay alive in messy situations because every time we get a kill, we start to regen our health. It isn't an instant health bump like from Devour, but even still, it really helps you stay alive when you're in the fray. But I do want to be clear, triggering health regen means that if we take damage, then we will stop getting health back as the damage taken interrupts the health regen. But even still, this really helps with survivability. And for one other optional fragment, you could run Facet of Ruin for more shatter damage. This isn't much, but more damage is more damage. Onto the mods, on the helmet we have Dynamo and then Siphon mods to match our Glaives. But as I said, Heavy Ammo Finder works with Glaive melee kills, so you could run that over Dynamo. On the gloves, I just run Dexterity mods that match our Glaives for quicker handling on them. On the chest piece, resistances that match the activity are really good, or just melee resistance or concussive dampener, as well as emergency reinforcement. If you have armor charge, then this will proc when your shields are broken to give you 10% damage resistance, allowing you to tank even more damage. On the legs, I like Recuperation for an instant chunk of health whenever we pick up an Orb of Power, and then Scavengers to match my Glaive elements. But you could also run Innervation for more Duskfield grenades. And finally on the class item, we have Reaper to make an orb when we get a kill after dodging, and this works with our Glaive melees, so that's perfect. And then that orb can give us Void Overshield or Frost Armor thanks to Facet of Purpose, as well as proccing Recuperation on our boots for a chunk of health. Then we have Proximity Ward for an Overshield when we do a finisher, and finally Bomber for a bit of grenade energy when we use our dodge. As for weapons, like I said, I went with triple Glaives, but you could just run Winterbite and Rake Angle and then something like VS Velocity Baton with Attrition Orbs to be an orb printer to help you stay alive even more, as well as to weaken enemies with Concussive Reload. But like I said, I did set this build up around triple Glaives. Or hell, you could even just go with Winterbite because it hits like a tank. So I used a Rake Angle with Replenishing Aegis and Chill Clip, as this allows me to slow and freeze enemies with my Glaive, which helps us hit for more damage and to proc Stylus Execution. And then I like Ecliptic Distaff for destabilizing rounds, which pairs great with the explosion from Triton Vice. And when enemies are volatile, we can proc Stylish again. And in the heavy slot, of course we have Winterbite, as that's our only heavy Glaive. And this thing is a monster. It hits 50% harder than regular Glaives, and as long as you have ammo in the magazine, it will apply 40 stacks of slow. This means you want to be using it as your melee option as much as possible. It will deal double damage when Halberdier's Reach is active, and then when it freezes an enemy after only 3 hits, it will hit for 120% more damage plus deal shatter damage. So this thing can delete champions in just a few hits. And because it applies slow all on its own, it can deal with Overload or Unstoppable champs, and it can proc Stylus Executioner very easily for us. It is absolutely wonderful and what allows us to dispatch champs in just one stun, even in GM content. And you can see on Carl, we smack him for 93,000 damage in just one quick swing. It's crazy. And that damage is even without any weaken or anything. And you could also throw in some shatter damage for good measure. So yeah, it slaps. Finally, we have some pretty good artifact mods to go with this build. Curative Orbs will give you an orb when you break a combatant's shield. The Thick of It will grant you armor charge for getting rapid final blows while surrounded, and this is great for our next mod, Emergency Flare. Emergency Reinforcement consumes all but 1 armor charge. So basically, we can just have Emergency Reinforcement ready to go more often. Then we have Killing Breeze for more mobility after rapid final blows. This is nice as it will just help us get a quicker dodge cooldown. Power from Pain is niche but could work. Rapid final blows against weakened combatants grants Devour. So sometimes your Glaive melee can actually tag multiple enemies, and if you ever happen to do this and weaken them, and then kill them quickly, you may be able to proc Devour, making you even more of an unkillable tank. Then we have Total Carnage to get even more DR when we're doing a finisher. Debilitating Wave is basically Facet of Defiance in artifact form, so realistically you could take this fragment off for something else. And finally we have Hail the Storm for even more shatter damage when it's boosted. And that is it for the build. As always, you can customize this however you want to. You can run it strictly with Winterbite if you want, and then use some better weapons in your kinetic and energy slot. It's completely up to you. What is so great about this build is it rewards you for playing aggressively, but it's also extremely ammo efficient thanks to getting so many melee kills, so you can easily run double special. It's insanely fun, and I hope you give it a try. Anyways, that's it for the video. If you enjoyed it, a like and subscription would be greatly appreciated. And if you want to go the extra mile, come watch me on Twitch sometime where I'm always cooking up off-meta but extremely powerful builds. And check out this video on how to use glaives if you're a noob to running them. It will really help you utilize this build to its max potential. Anyways, I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.